For those looking for a liberatory martial arts learning approach and curriculum, we've created Liberation Martial Arts. It doesn't just teach you martial arts, it's also a radical and alternative approach to learning. Thanks to Christopher Lay, C. Papa George, Muhammad Al Ghul, Sin, and Jonathan Blaney for signing up. Sign up for Liberation Martial Arts at the Southpaw Pod Patreon or support us by signing up for one of our other tiers. This will give you access to bonus content, transcripts, and uncut versions of our shows without breaks or interruptions. Those in the Patreon sponsor tier also get a monthly training session with me. If you prefer to support others, your sponsorship can go to the training of an organizer instead. There's also ways to make one-time contributions. Find all our links at southpawpod.com. This is Sam.
And this is Fight Study.
Hey fam. So it's been another week of fights and some interesting topics related to martial arts and combat sports. First, let's recap some of the action, beginning with Han versus Holm 2. MMA fans might not have realized it, but Holly Holm, who last fought in the UFC in April of 2024, has not retired. Instead, she asked for her release, which she got in January of 2025. But she hasn't been idle since 2024. In August of 2025, she competed in wrestling at RAF 1. She was supposed to fight in a new MMA league called the GFL, but that organization canceled its events indefinitely. Wanting to stay active, she returned to boxing. She last fought in boxing in 2013. So over a decade away from the sport, she returned in June of 2025, winning a unanimous decision over Yolanda Ochoa. This set her up for a title fight against Stephanie Han in January of 2026 for the WBA female lightweight title. The fight ended due to a cut on Han's head in the 7th round. Since the cut was caused by an accidental clash of heads, it went to the scorecards and Han won the fight. But because of how it ended, Han offered Holm a chance to run it back, which they did this past weekend. Now, Holm is not only a boxing Hall of Famer and a future UFC Hall of Famer, but she's also 44. She's 9 years older than Han. Han, like Holm, and like Amanda Serrano, who also fought on this card, started out in kickboxing. But like her sister Jennifer Han, who was also a boxing world champion, Stephanie transitioned to boxing. Han is undefeated in boxing, and Holm is a Hall of Famer. Han won their first fight, but this time it was Holm who made the adjustments. As an older martial artist myself, it was impressive to see Holm be the workhorse in this fight. She moved more, had better energy, and threw and landed more punches. In fact, Holm outlanded Han 107 to 70 punches. One judge had it a draw, the other two gave Han the fight, 96 to 94. Did I think Holm won the fight? Yes. But did Han land the harder shots, especially early on? Also yes. Holm came at Han and threw more punches. Han waited and countered. Han did a lot of good work in the early rounds, especially since Holm is a southpaw. She countered Holm's rear straight. However, by the latter half of the fight, Holm made adjustments. She would throw the left and weave her head out of the way of the counter. It actually took Holm several rounds to settle in and settle down. She was getting caught on the way in, but once her footwork began to smooth out and she was pushing off the ground, she was beating Han to the punch. Something I thought was interesting in the match was how Han would switch stances after she threw her right. I don't know if that was part of the game plan or just something that happened as she was chasing Holm. Maybe it was to give Holm something to think about. Now, why in general do many coaches not like it when boxers switch stances? The traditional answer is that it opens you up and makes you sloppy. I have a different explanation that doesn't disagree with those answers, but explains it from an LMA lens where we think a lot about executive function. So fighting in one stance is complicated enough. It takes boxers a lifetime to really get good at fighting in one stance. Now, if you add another stance into the mix, you're giving your brain so much more to process. When there's too much load on the brain, you slow down. And if your reactions are slow in boxing, you get hit. From this lens, the beauty of simplicity means less to think about, which means you're faster to react. But simple and complex are relative to the fighter. One person's complex is another person's simple. So, as I said in a previous episode, this is the drawback of online commentary and analysis. You don't know the fighter or what their capacity is like. Good coaching is all about knowing your fighter well and coaching realistically to the fighter in front of you, not the one you wish you had. Online commentary or armchair analysis is mostly about idealism, how they think fighters should ideally fight with no awareness of who they are or what they can and can't do. Han versus Holm wasn't a brawl, but it was a good fight. We as fans should pay more attention to good fights. Now, Amanda Serrano fought Cheyenne Hansen in a defense of the unified featherweight titles. This time, rather than wearing her usual Air Jordans, she wore Converse All-Stars to model her look after the fictional character Rocky Balboa. She's unusual in that she doesn't box in boxing shoes, but at the same time, it's normal for professional athletes to have peculiar rituals, which include attire. Not wearing boxing shoes has become Serrano's good luck ritual, so that's why she does it. Serrano took 2 rounds to finish Hansen, tying Christy Martin's knockout record. Once Serrano felt Hansen's power, she decided to casually walk her down and finish her. It wasn't crafty technical boxing. It was just a mismatch. This weekend, you also had UFC Macau, headlined by Song versus Figueiredo. One of the more intriguing fights of the night was Angela Hill versus Zhang Jingnan. Zhang is a former one strawweight champion, so there were big expectations for her against Hill. But Zhang was fighting at 115. In one, she was fighting at 125. So there were questions about how a weight cut would affect her and whether she would be too small for this division. This has also been an issue for Japanese fighters, where their weight divisions in Japan don't line up perfectly with the UFC's. Then they end up changing weight divisions, which happened to 2 fighters on this card, which I'll get into later. But for Zhang, the UFC is a completely different system from one. One you have to get used to, which might even mean bulking up and getting bigger to cut weight. This is why fighters either hire specialists to help or work with the UFC PI or both. As soon as the fight started, Zhang looked way too thin. Now, for Hill, I also noticed something different when she walked in. She was with a new team. She was with the Bishops, who are a husband and wife team that teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and also does MMA. Jenna Bishop fights for PFL. And with this new team, Hill fought better than ever. Zhang, on the other hand, looked really weak and slow. The changes were good for Hill, but the new weight changes for Zhang, I think, didn't work out so well. Zhang lost every round, and there's no other way to put it, but she was dominated. I'm actually glad to see Hill with a new team because I felt she's needed that change for a while. Maybe it was just for this one camp and she'll be back with her old gym in the future. I don't know. But she looked great in this fight. However, at 41, I don't know how many more fights she has left with the UFC. Maybe she does what Holm does and leaves the UFC but keeps fighting. Ray Surya finished Louis Gurule in the first round. He made it look easy. Takedown, took the back, and finished with a deep face crank. He's only lost to Joshua Van, and it was at flyweight. For this fight, he moved up to bantamweight. So like I mentioned, finding the right weight division for him meant moving up. Alex Perez fought surging Sue Mudarji in this fight, which unfortunately ended in a no contest due to an accidental groin strike. Sue was looking good until then, and in recent fights, he had been using his length and evasiveness well. Unfortunately for Perez, who's had a string of injuries, seems to still have the injury curse. He was retching into a bucket after the low blow and had to be transferred to a hospital. It was a fun fight where Sue looked great with an unfortunate ending. Former Ryzen champion Kai Asakura finally got his UFC win against Cameron Smotherman after moving back up to bantamweight. It took him a couple of losses to realize he was in the wrong division. When the finish happened, it was quick and sudden. The thing about MMA striking is that you're usually fighting and striking from far away. So the ability to lunge in with strikes has become such an MMA-specific skill. This is why the point karate style transitions so well to MMA. MMA has a lot of circling and feinting because of that distance as well, and why speed is such an attribute. Asakura is fast, which is why he's had so much success in MMA. He won this fight in under 2 minutes, just lunged in and caught Smotherman. Smotherman couldn't react in time. I think he was shocked at that speed. The main event was Song Yadong versus Davison Figueiredo. It didn't turn out to be the striking affair people expected, nor was it a long drawn-out war. Instead, it was Song snatching up a signature Team Alpha Male guillotine on Figueiredo toward the end of the second round. It was opportunistic rather than dominating his way to a finish. But on the subject of speed, Song is fast, and that speed was giving Figgy some pause, which is why he shot a bad takedown, which led to the finish. If you haven't noticed, I'm not covering every fight that happened this weekend because there were so many fights, like Dmitry Bivol, who also fought and won his boxing fight. Darren Till won his BKFC fight. If you're a fight fan, in a broad sense, there's a lot of content out there. If you're looking for it all to be in the UFC, well, now you got some problems. If you want it in the UFC and you only pay attention to welterweight and above, now you got serious problems. Don't be so picky and you'll be happier. Be diverse. Then in RWS Muay Thai, you had, as always, some great fights. In the first fight, you had undefeated Nadak versus Maria Eduarda, who dropped down in weight. And it paid off in this fight because she was visibly bigger and stronger than Nadak. Nadak had a hard time hurting her, and when she did hurt Eduarda, it took too much effort and really sapped her energy. Nadak was catching Eduarda with beautiful body kicks, but it was not phasing her. Eduarda walked her down and beat Nadak with punches, constantly knocking her head back. It was a lopsided fight with some moments by Nadak. I think with the day before weigh-ins and foreign fighters coming from camps with MMA fighters, the foreign fighters really have their weight cuts and strength training down. It's becoming an arms race where now everyone has to cut weight and strength train to keep up. Muay Thai also has 2-minute breaks, which I think benefits big foreign fighters. The cool thing about watching Muay Thai, especially RWS, is watching a combat sport evolve in real time. It reminds me of early UFC before there was a standard model of training. Muay Thai has been around for way longer than MMA, but the increase in foreign talent is also causing a similar evolution. Muay Thai is no longer in a Thai bubble. Kansak, known as the Drunken Master, defeated Yuan Xiaolong with an elbow. And the way Kansak flows in the ring really does make him look like a drunken master. He's really just interesting to watch. kind of moves like prime Anderson Silva. And by prime Silva, what made Silva look so unique was how he looked like he was having fun out there. And that's how Kansak looks, relaxed and playful. Then you had Erdem Dinser versus Shirmukh Hamad. It was an interesting clash of styles. Dinser fought in a traditional Muay Thai style. Shirmukh Hamad fought in a more karate/taekwondo style with jumping spinning kicks. One time, while Shirmukh Hamad was jumping, Dinser chopped his leg out from under him. That could have potentially injured that leg because later in the fight, Dinser attacked that same leg and Shirmukh Hamad could not continue. You don't often see leg kick finishes, but when you do, you realize how devastating leg kicks are. Then you had the legend in Duanglenlek fighting up-and-coming Russian fighter Kirill Kamatov. And the thing about these Russian fighters is that they have hands, like serious punching power and punching skills. Kamatov was stalking Duanglenlek, looking to land devastating punches, and eventually he found him. And all it took was a left hook and a right hand. The Soviet style is already so effective in boxing. Now it's also effective in Muay Thai. The main event was Singhasirat versus Laostar. This was the third time they were facing each other. Singhasirat was the bigger fighter, and when you're both skilled fighters, size really does make a difference. Singhasirat bullied Laostar to a finish. A note to our listeners. If you love the Southpaw Project, please support us and help us get paid for our labor by financially supporting us on Patreon. This will give you access to exclusive bonus content, like transcripts, early releases of Southpaw Deep Space Nine, our fictional narrative podcast, Fighters Brew, break-free versions of our shows without interruptions like you're hearing now, bonus articles, Fighters Brew transcripts with extra content, Liberation Martial Arts Online, as well as our private chat group on Discord. You can find all pertinent links at southpawpod.com. Now let's talk about another topic, which first needs a preface. I've been doing Southpaw for over 10 years, and since it's an explicit radical left martial arts project, leftists are the people who engage with it. And when people tell me what they train in, more than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or boxing or MMA or karate or taekwondo or judo or anything else, the most common category is historical weapons and even fantasy weapons. Let me make it a broader category and I'll get into why in a moment. But the broad category isn't just European weapons. It can also include Japanese or Chinese weapons. And if we get into lightsabers, role-playing weapons, and cosplay weapons, the category gets bigger. And with fantasy weapons, they're often still rooted in historical weapons systems. It's often the same teachers and clubs. So people keep saying the left needs to train or ask annoying questions like, "A fast train today, did you?" But lots of leftists are training. I'm not saying HEMA or weapons arts don't have chuds or racists. Not at all. What I am saying is out of the martial arts population on the left, and by the left, I mean people who are actively involved in organizing, mutual aid, or some other activism, they're disproportionately training with historical weapons. What does this tell us? It goes back to something I've been talking about for a long time, which is that people tend to pursue and stick to hobbies that are fun. This isn't even my opinion. It's a scientific fact. And there are a lot of leftists and anti-fascists who won't like this reality. But leftists, more than the general population, come to training as part of novelty and entertainment seeking. This has gotten more people on the left to consistently train than telling people they need to train to fight fascism, for self-defense, or for the revolution. Even when I posted about this online, this got more interaction and had more people talking about it than similar posts about BJJ, MMA, Muay Thai, self-defense, or what have you. But it's not just that historical or fantasy weapons overlap with other leftist interests, like D&D or anime or fantasy or sci-fi. that there is a low barrier to entry. There's no one stopping you from forming a HEMA club or a lightsaber club or gathering with friends to go outside and do fantasy melee fighting. There's also less of a sense of imposter syndrome because there's no reference point. So not only is it easier for you to start something if there's no club near you, but going back to chuds and racists existing in all spaces, if there's only one HEMA or sword fighting school in your town and it's run by fascists, then you can go start your own club. You can't do that with other martial arts or martial activities because historical weapons arts are an offshoot of DIY culture. People took old books and manuals and recreated these arts, which means anyone can do it. It's like skateboarding. There's a skateboarding school near you, but everyone's an asshole? Fine, go practice on your own with some friends. But with other arts, even leftist practitioners will gatekeep and police. You never fought? Well, you can't teach. Wait a minute. What if all the fighters in my area are creeps and racists? It's not that leftists are naive to that possibility. It's that these leftists prioritize their idea of legitimacy over that potential source of harm. Is that contradictory? Yes. Leftists talking about martial arts are ripe with contradictions, more than usual. The same people who talk about being historically accurate will have no qualms making stuff up about martial arts history from whatever they heard in comic books. They'll say you don't need theory, you can be self-directed, while also poo-pooing your self-directed martial arts choices. Don't read that dead European thinker, but read the zine with 100 drills you need to memorize. Don't you dare try to come up with your own stuff. They'll say no gods and no masters while simultaneously enforcing ranks and to look for certified coaches and black belts. Safe and inclusive, but belt whipping and hazing are good, actually. Self-direction and autonomy, except when it comes to learning martial arts. You need to memorize and practice what the teacher tells you. They're not living up to their left-wing promises. Yeah. Welcome to the world I've been living in for the past 10 years. Now, could DIY lead to lower quality instruction? Sure. But then look at BJJ, which does not allow you to be unaffiliated or DIY. It has done a good job of ensuring quality and preventing fake black belts, all the while increasing sexual assault, grooming, conspiracy theories, and right-wing extremism. Is that an improvement? The ability to leave and start your own thing allows you to escape something bad. BJJ doesn't allow that unless you leave the art altogether. And it makes you feel really guilty and weak for leaving the art. I think there's an overemphasis on legitimacy and not enough emphasis on harm and the ability to escape harm. Leftist and anti-fascist martial artists are no exception to this bias. I can't count how many times I've seen a leftist or anti-fascist martial artist share stuff from Trumper martial artists just because they're quote-unquote legitimate, while simultaneously attacking leftist martial arts accounts if they're the wrong kind of leftist. Legitimacy and what the wrong kind is are all based on their opinion, of course. There's also a wild bias that chuds are more legitimate when it comes to martial arts. Forget your left tendency for a moment. What does this say about your values? And those who yell at you to train or talk about fascist training, perhaps they ignore the popularity of leftists who like to play with swords because they don't think it's legitimate. They probably think it's silly. But then they're ignoring what actually motivates leftists to train, ignoring what's proven to work, the actual facts of this world, rather than the world they wish they lived in, which is fun, novelty, community, and the ability to be self-directed are important to motivation. No one can stop you from swinging a sword in your backyard or learning with your friends. Tying it back to liberation martial arts, LMA, it has always been about self-directed learning and an approach where you can teach yourself or you and your friends can teach each other. We got a lot of backlash for years because we challenged Western teaching orthodoxy. Backlash is actually an understatement. People got really mean and vicious about it and were offended that we were challenging the status quo, despite them purporting to be against the status quo, that we challenged orthodoxy despite them not liking orthodoxy. They don't like organized religion, yet they treated their martial arts like one. But I think we were onto something very real. In fact, what we were doing is already in line with what leftists were doing anyway. We're just saying it doesn't have to be so domain specific to medieval, fantasy, or sci-fi weapons. That a lot of what makes people consistent there is universal. Motivation is motivation. There is no theory of motivation that's specific to leftists or HEMA practitioners. It's just how our brains are wired. I know some of you wish that wasn't the case and that people were motivated to train for more serious life or death reasons. But what's more life or death than our health? Yet more people stick with physical activity because they like it rather than because they fear dying. These martial artists talk about training for survival, yet won't even mask for each other. Are these the people we should be listening to? Pickleball and softball have probably got more people active in recent years than any scare campaign about heart disease. So whether it's physical activities, exercise, hobbies, or martial arts, the best one is the one you'll stick to. And the one you'll stick to is the one you like. It's a relationship. And relationships are only a thing if you stick to them. And you stick to them if you like them. The beauty of DIY and starting your own club is that rather than solving the hard problem of trying to find community in potentially chud spaces, you can just bring the martial arts to your already existing non-chud community. Well, that's all I got for this week. If you enjoyed it, consider supporting this podcast on Patreon. You can also sign up for Liberation Martial Arts and some of our other tiers there as well. Until next time, see ya.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.